Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, August 26th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Mary Gilmore. Our first article is Back to School Costs Hit Home for Parents. I'm looking for every sale I can, Utah mom laments. Brandy McGrath usually buys quality, long-lasting school supplies for her 9-year-old son and his teachers, but sharp increases in the cost of folders, pencils, and other products have forced her to cut back and search for cheaper alternatives. It's insane how expensive things have gotten, said McGrath, 48, of Salt Lake City. I'm looking for every sale I can. In Daytona Beach, Florida, Karen Kaiser also was struck by the cost of back-to-school shopping this year. It is crazy, she said, estimating that she and her husband spent way over $100 on just notebooks and loose-leaf paper for their 2 daughters. That's not counting what we had to pay for back-to-school clothes, shoes, and haircuts. The cost of a typical school supply list, including notebooks, paper, pencils, and glue sticks, is nearly $175, almost 8% higher than in 2025. An analysis by the progressive think tanks Groundwork Collaboration and the Century Foundation shows. Some essential items, such as lunch boxes, notebooks, and tissues, cost 20% or more than they did a year ago, the analysis found, pointing in part to the effects of President Donald Trump's tariff agenda, which the Federal Reserve says raised the cost of many products manufactured overseas for American consumers. Over the same period, the cost of electronics, such as headphones, rose 6.6%, the report found. Meanwhile, the typical lunch items cost 10.9% more than they did in 2025, the analysis said, citing price hikes on everything from blueberries to deli meat. The rising prices come as Americans are already struggling with inflation and high gas prices stemming from the war in Iran, forcing many to take on debt and stretch their meals. A survey by the personal finance company Credit Karma found that 57% of parents are entering the back-to-school season carrying credit card debt, and nearly half plan to pursue new credit to help pay for back-to-school expenses. The USA Today network reporters spoke with families across the country about how the rising cost of school supplies is affecting them. Many said it has worsened their already dire financial situation, forcing them to cut back further, look for donations, and buy the cheapest versions of what their child needs for school. Some had to forego school shopping altogether. There's all sorts of balancing I have to do now, McGrath said. Everything is squeezing us. Companies are raising prices. Major school supply brands have increased their prices in recent months, citing inflation, rising gas prices, and the Trump administration's tariffs. Newell Brands, which owns well-known school supply brands such as Sharpie, Expo, Papermate, and Elmer's Glue, increased prices on consumers to offset more than $170 million in tariff costs. ACCO Brands, which owns school notebook supplier Mead and Five Star, cited costs from tariffs and conflict in the Middle East as headwinds that will lead to higher prices for consumers. We do anticipate having to push through additional cost increases globally, said Thomas Tedford, president and CEO of ACCO Brands, in an earnings call in July. In a statement, White House spokesperson Kush Dancy said, as traffic through the Strait of Hormuz naturalizes, energy prices and thus overall inflation will come down and real wages will rise. President Trump's economic agenda delivered historic working-class prosperity in his first term, and this same agenda is cleaning up Joe Biden's mess to deliver more job, wage, and investment growth. McGrath, who leads her local parent-teacher association, said she compared receipts from 2025 with what she spent this year and was flabbergasted by the difference. I was paying $1 a piece for basic folders last year, and today they were $2.79, she said. As prices for back-to-school products rise, more families are searching for deals or opting for cheaper alternatives, including donations. About 62% of back-to-school shoppers said they probably would be seeking out sales this year, according to an annual report by the personal finance money management company NerdWallet. A quarter of the respondents said they plan to cut back on school-related spending, and 72% said items like clothing, school supplies, and electronics feel noticeably more expensive this year than in 2025. Jenny Craig of Ormond Beach, Florida, said she spent hundreds of dollars more on school supplies for her 3 daughters this year than she did last year. To keep costs down, she tried to save where she could. I said no to the $1.50 folders that are nicer simply because they have a cute cat on it, she said. We got the plain 49-cent folders instead. Others are doing the same. McGrath said she left the notebooks decorated with elaborate prints and brightly colored animals on the shelves, even though they're her son's favorite. He's going to get the cheapest folder I can afford, and we'll put stickers on it because I can't afford the prices for anything fun that anything fun is going for. According to the country, tens of thousands of parents line up for free backpacks, notebooks, and other supplies for their children. Many groups organizing these fundraisers say they've seen the need for donations rise sharply over the past several years. The Brevard Schools Foundation, which serves children and families in the East Central Florida area, went from giving free backpacks to about 3,100 students in 2023 to supplying them to nearly 5,000 children last year. Families continue to face rising costs for school supplies, while teachers regularly encounter students who arrive without the basic materials they need to learn, Joan Perry, a spokesperson for the foundation, told Florida Today, part of the USA Today network. Americans already under strain. The new school year arrived at a time when families were already struggling to afford everyday expenses. Studies have shown more Americans are dipping into their savings and taking on debt to cover essential payments on housing, food, and rent. In a June survey, 30% of respondents said they used a credit card to pay for essentials in the past 3 months, knowing they may not pay off their bills. Chase Miranda, 36, of Indian Lake, Ohio, said he and his wife have fallen behind on rent and utility payments just to afford groceries, especially after their food stamp benefits were cut in half. Trump/Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program funding in 2025 in a move the White House said would strengthen the program to serve those who need it most. More than 4 million people are estimated to have lost food benefits since the Republican-backed legislation took effect. Miranda, who's unable to work because of chronic pain stemming from scoliosis and bulging discs in his back, said the cuts meant he couldn't buy his 12-year-old son anything new for the upcoming school year. Until we get enough money saved up, he'll use last year's supplies, he said. Consumer prices have spiked for 5 straight years. In that span, prices have risen more than 25%. The inflation crisis began under former President Joe Biden in the waning months of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has persisted through Trump's second term, fed by his campaign of import tariffs and a lengthening war against Iran. Emily Saturn, a parent of 2 in Peoria, Arizona, said the cost of groceries has forced her to consider whether to keep packing her daughter's lunch. It may now be cheaper to pay for lunches provided by the school, she said. Teachers feel the squeeze too. The high prices are also affecting teachers, many of whom must pay out of pocket to supply their classrooms with essential items like tissues, wipes, hand sanitizers, pencils, and paper. Jared Peevler of Perryville, Kentucky, said his wife, a third-grade teacher, had to solicit donations online to stock her classroom with supplies. Her school provides its teachers with only a $200 allowance for the year. That's like one tank of gas for my truck, Peevler said, and they expect that to last her all year. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. As teachers struggle to pay for supplies, they're turning to donations and parents to help fill the gaps, though that's often not enough. In Salt Lake City, McGrath hosts fundraisers and collects supplies for her son's elementary school. This year, she has brought in about a third of the donations she usually receives. As parents and teachers alike struggle to keep up with their costs, schools may cancel some of their field trips, McGrath said. Some supply closets stocked with clothes and notebooks for students in need may be emptier than usual. It's hurting everyone, she said. Elections swiveling on data centers. Public backlash has leaders changing tune. Populist opinion to data centers fueling the boom in artificial intelligence is scrambling up the 2026 midterms, cutting across ideological lines. Americans from urban cores to rural outskirts are objecting to the facilities which house the servers and network equipment used for AI and other digital services. A Gallup survey released earlier this year found roughly 71% of adults in the United States oppose building the centers in their area, and barely 1/4 favored the projects. That has spurred a noticeable pivot from elected leaders. Chief among them is Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican who issued new directives ending certain tax incentives, curtailing water and energy consumption, and releasing guidelines tech companies must follow to help lower electricity costs. The order will temporarily halt about 1,800 data center projects in Texas. I established guidelines and guardrails to protect Texas communities, Abbott said in a post on X in August. These guidelines are now the universally applied standard in Texas. Abbott's shift came less than a year after the governor, 68, faces re-election this year. Praised Google, Abbott's shift came less than a year after the governor, 68, faces re-election this year. Praised Google for a $40 billion data center investment in the state. He said it would make the Lone Star State an epicenter of AI development. The change in tone also coincided with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Gina Hinojosa pounding Abbott for letting tech companies into the state with little oversight. I'm calling on Greg Abbott to issue a moratorium on any new data centers with an emergency executive order to do so, Hinojosa, a state lawmaker, said in a virtual news conference in July. He has the sole power to do it, she added. That moratorium should stand until the legislature can convene and make sure any data center being built is done by American Union labor that is licensed. We also want local control over the work. Across the United States, opponents of data centers have expressed fury at local public officials about the strain on water and electricity resources, but also the disruption to communities because of noise and pollution. Polling by Gallup found the effect on resources was the leading reason for opposition, with 50% of the respondents mentioning environmental concerns. Opposition also cuts across every major demographic, including party affiliation, the survey found. But with Democrats at 56% strongly opposed versus Republicans at 39%, independent voters' opposition sat at 48%, Gallup found. That has spurred a sprint by Democratic and Republican candidates running this year who appear to be recalibrating their positions on data centers as states and local governments rush to come up with new rules and regulations. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a rumored 2028 presidential hopeful on the Democratic side, signed an executive order August 18th requiring local approval before any state grants are awarded to data center developers. In May, he had cast the telecommunication facility as a major economic project that would lead on innovation. I'm putting these developers on notice and letting them know that we will not let them bully Pennsylvanians, disregard our constitutional right to clean air and pure water, and drive up our utility bills, Shapiro said in a post on X. In the Wisconsin race for governor between Democratic David Crowley and Republican Tom Tiffany, both are looking to leverage the controversial construction boom against their opponent. Tiffany blitzed the contest with seven figures worth of ads describing his rival as data center Dave Crowley, hoping to build a wedge. In the Democratic primary, Crowley's foe, State Representative Francesca Hong, a Democratic socialist, was the only candidate who called for a moratorium on construction of the new data center in the Badger State. In response to the Republican attacks, Crowley has spotlighted Tiffany's voting record in Congress that sought to make it easier to build projects like data centers. The two oppose statewide moratoriums, but both say they want stricter regulations on such developments moving forward. The populist tidal wave over data centers has yet to reach the shores of the White House, where President Donald Trump defended their construction as a cash cow for states that embrace them. All of this income and other benefits will be going to red states and some blue where data centers are sought as cash cows, with lower taxes and record-setting jobs, Trump wrote in a Truth Social post July 15th. Trump's sentiment echoed the feelings of industry leaders who tout the technology's revolutionary capabilities they argue will power growth. Among those who support fueling AI with these facilities, about 2/3 cite the local economic benefit, according to the Gallup survey. But the president's support for the data centers is at odds with the advice GOP candidates seeking election this year are being given. In a memo August 18th, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the campaign arm of the GOP contenders, noted that the data center backlash is hurting incumbent Senator Jon Husted of Ohio in his closely watched bid against former Senator Sherrod Brown. More than any other thing in this race, data centers are the anchor hanging around Husted's neck, the memo said. If he loses and data centers get the blame, politicians across the country will take notice, and they will not go near the next one. The memo dropped almost 2 weeks after Brown, who once applauded an Amazon data center, released a 30-second spot claiming Husted forced the facilities in Ohio, which is home to more than 200 existing or in development data centers, according to Data Center Map. As lieutenant governor, Husted championed data center projects and called Ohio the tech capital of the Midwest. Now he contends data centers should be a local decision and introduce federal legislation that aims to ensure companies pay for the facility's electricity. Republican strategists in the memo said data centers have become an effective messaging strategy for Democrats. Campaigns or party committees cannot fix the toxic brand of an entire segment of the economy, the memo said. The companies that need these projects built have to fix how Ohioans see them, who benefits, who pays, and why a community should want one. Until that happens, the issue will continue to dominate the race. 2 weeks with no power feels like end times in Gary, Indiana. After massive storms ripped through the northwest Indiana and knocked out power on August 11th, Latasha Montgomery assumed she and more than 370,000 people in the area would soon have electricity restored. Nearly 2 weeks later, Montgomery and thousands of other Indiana residents are still living in the dark. Now it's been 12 days. I don't even know how to really grasp that, said Montgomery, who lives with her 3 children in a home on Gary's east side. It really feels like the end times. Families lost hundreds of dollars in spoiled food after refrigerator temperatures rose. Some tried to salvage deep freezers full of food to no avail. People started washing their laundry by hand. Schools closed, forcing working parents to send their children to live with relatives who could care for them during the day. Massive storms began battering northwest Indiana on August 11th. 2 tornadoes ripped through the region, and 100-mile-an-hour winds turned the trees into battering rams. Damage to the electric grid was catastrophic. More than 60% of northern Indiana's public service company, NIPSCO, customers lost power. Some towns have flickered back to life since the widespread outages, but NIPSCO estimates that it will not have widespread power to Gary and Portage, a neighboring city of nearly 40,000 people, until late August 25th. In the meantime, Gary has taken on a post-apocalyptic atmosphere. Massive trees, broken branches from the storm still litter the sidewalks. Tank-like trucks full of utility crews crawl the streets. With traffic lights dark, vehicles haphazardly make turns at busy intersections. Some blame Mother Nature for the longest outage they have ever endured. Others, including Governor Mike Braun, have taken aim at the utility company. The utility, the governor said, continues to fail Hoosiers despite having access to every state resource available. It is time that NIPSCO gets the power back on now, Braun said in a statement to Indy Star, part of USA Today's network, on August 23rd. Gary, once a bustling Chicago suburb full of steel and refinery workers, was carved up and hollowed out as manufacturing moved overseas in the 1970s. A third of the city's 67,000 residents now live in poverty. Gary's mayor is adamant the city is on the rebound. Then the storm hit. Generators, or lack thereof, now divide Gary residents into those able to meet their basic needs and those who say life is becoming unbearable. Timothy Holmes said he had no choice but to get a generator despite the machine's daily appetite for $30 to $50 of gasoline. Without his personal power system, he wouldn't be able to keep his pacemaker online. For his neighbors who can't afford a generator, life is bleak. We live like cavemen, said Fantasia Malone, who lives on Arizona Street with her 3 children. It's like the apocalypse. The storm wreaked havoc on the property Malone rents. Water leaked through the ceiling and debris tore through her backyard, where she now refuses to let her children play. The first few days without power stripped some Gary residents of all sense of normalcy and brought the challenges they never before anticipated. When the outage hit, everyone that was open only accept cash, Montgomery said. I don't carry any cash at all. Went to ATM, it was out as well. I had no assets. Then Montgomery's refrigerator grew warm. She had been driving 30 minutes into Illinois to find ice and groceries. Sometimes she'd feed her family fast food or restaurant meals, but the costs were adding up. I'm afraid to check my bank account, she said, but I have no choice. It's either that or starve. Some Gary parents scrambled to find accommodations for their children after powerless schools shut down. Destiny and Kevin Jenkins, who both work at UPS, sent their 4 children to live with their grandmother in Chicago. In another part of the city, Jackie Taylor said her daughter's school just got power back on August 22nd after canceling classes last week. By the morning of August 24th, the majority of Gary's schools were expected to be open. Most of the schools are up, Gary Mayor Eddie Melton told Indy Star on the afternoon of August 23rd. We have maybe 3 or 4 elementary schools that NIPSCO is working on. Some residents say they are making do by charging their phones in their cars, keeping their front doors open to let the breeze in, and filling coolers with ice. Others are at their wits' end. Donna Tucker, who can't afford a generator, said she's down to her last $13 until September 3rd, when her next benefits payment arrives. I'm a senior citizen on Social Security income, she said. Who is going to give me my food back? The trees that took down the power lines, plunging the area into darkness, are still everywhere in Gary. They're still blocking sidewalks, lying on roofs, and tangling power lines. Some residents say they understand why the Herculean task of cleanup is taking so long. Others, however, say NIPSCO has neglected the area, many parts of which are low income. The utility has restored service for 357,953 customers since the outage began on August 11th, according to the NIPSCO website. But 16,476 remain without power as of 4 p.m. on August 23rd. A NIPSCO spokesperson told Indy Star that restoration plans are dictated by severity and extent of the damage. In some areas, repairs to major transmission and distribution infrastructure must be completed before the work can begin on smaller sections of the system serving individual neighborhoods. Every community matters to us, and restoration priorities are based on system needs, safety considerations, and the work required to restore service to the greatest number of customers as efficiently as possible. The utility has mobilized all available resources since the onset of the storm, including our own crews, mutual and aid personnel, qualified contractors, affiliated employees, and support from the Indiana National Guard and the law enforcement, the spokesperson continued. Braun, however, takes credit for many of the resources restoring life in Gary. He sent 71 National Guardsmen and teams from multiple state agencies last week to clean routes of fallen trees. Several residents told Indy Star they don't believe NIPSCO was prepared for the storm. They pointed to the mess of trees toppling power lines throughout the city as evidence. Melton said that the city of Gary has long known there's a backlog of trees in need of vegetation management, but does not have the resources to address the problem alone. We were asking NIPSCO to give us what their canvas is on vegetation management so we can better understand how frequent should it be more often, Melton said. The mayor himself has been living without power for nearly 2 weeks. 2 die in Pennsylvania as measles comeback continues. At least 2 people have died of measles in Pennsylvania, the state's health department said, adding that both were unvaccinated. The measles deaths were the first in Pennsylvania in 35 years, the State Department of Health said in a news release August 25th, and the first such deaths in the United States this year, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention data. Because measles were largely eliminated in the Commonwealth for more than 3 decades, people are not familiar with this disease and don't fully understand the potential severity of the illness, Pennsylvania Secretary of Health Dr. Deborah Bogan said in a statement. As a physician, I want to make sure that people understand that the MMR vaccine is safe and provides the best protection we have against measles. Both patients lived in Lancaster County, the health department said, adding that it would not identify them to protect their and their families' privacy. Authorities have confirmed 393 cases of the measles in Pennsylvania in 2026, according to the news release. What is measles and how do you get it? Measles is a highly contagious virus that can cause severe short and long-term health problems. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes past the hour. It includes pneumonia and brain swelling. Nearly 20% of people who contract measles end up in the hospital. Though measles-related deaths are rare, they are not uncommon, occurring in 1 to 3 patients per 1,000 cases, according to Pennsylvania health authorities. The best protection against measles is getting fully vaccinated, the state health department said. The MMR vaccine, administered over 2 doses, bursts a person's immune system and provides 97% lifetime protection. The measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is usually given in 2 doses around ages 1 to 5. The CDC also notes that adults and teens should also be up to date on MMR vaccines. Is the MMR vaccine safe? Medical experts long have said the vaccine is safe and effective. For decades, the vaccine has been administered to millions of children, helping prevent severe and life-threatening complications of measles, mumps, and rubella. Serious side effects of vaccines, including seizures, are very rare. The vaccine has been available in its current form since 1971, marking more than 50 years of safe and effective use. It has also been instrumental in curtailing the spread of measles, which before the vaccine's introduction in 1963 sickened an estimated 3 million to 4 million people in the United States every year and caused 500 deaths and 48,000 hospitalizations. Measles cases reach high record. Measles cases in the United States have surpassed last year's total and are at their highest since the disease was eliminated from the country nearly 3 decades ago, according to CDC data. The majority, 93%, occurred in unvaccinated people, and nearly 69% of the cases were in people ages 19 and younger. Cases reached a 30-year high in 2025, with 2,289 confirmed infections across 43 states and the District of Columbia. Nearly 90% of the cases were directly linked to 48 known outbreaks, and 93% of infections were contracted by unvaccinated people or those whose vaccination status was unknown. 3 people, including 2 children, died as a result of the outbreaks, the first pediatric measles deaths in decades. Dr. Mehmet Oz contradicts Trump's claims on vaccine. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, signed an executive order August 10th calling for more vaccine flexibility, fewer childhood vaccines, and splitting the combined childhood measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine into 3 shots at different times. The order also says all childhood vaccines should be spaced out, with each one administered in a separate doctor's office visit to the maximum extent feasible. Announcing the order, Trump said the mRNA vaccine could be quite lethal. Experts, however, say the vaccine is safer and effective. The vaccine is safe and effective, and research indicates dividing it into multiple shots has no health benefit. Dr. Mehmet Oz, head of the Centers for Medicine Medicare and Medicaid services continued or contradicted Trump's statement about the MMR shot in an interview August 23rd on CBC's Face the Nation, saying it is not a lethal vaccine. We're going to move on to the money section of the USA Today, and we're going to do 50 states. And the highlighted state today is Kentucky. Williamstown, a replica of Noah's Ark, 510 feet long and more than 5 stories high, has drawn millions of people to rural northern Kentucky for the past decade. It has become like the Disneyland of religious tourism in the region, minus the major rides. The roughly $100 million attraction celebrated its 10-year anniversary this summer with guest speakers and a concert series, but it also hit 2 other milestones: the loss of its multi-million-dollar tourism tax breaks and the lowest ticket sales reported since it's opened, excluding 2020. Alabama, Gadsden. Gadsden State Community College and the city broke ground on a new 10-court tennis center at the Gadsden Sports Park. The latest project is an ongoing partnership to expand athletic and recreational facilities in the city. Alaska, Juneau. The Juneau Assembly recently voted to sell City Hall to the Sealaska Heritage Institute for $1.5 million, clearing the way for the nonprofit to demolish the building and develop a proposed $40 million arts and cultural tourism complex in downtown Juneau, KTOO reported. Arizona, Coconino County. After 4 years of planning, engineering, and community review, the Havasupai tribe broke ground July 31st for construction of a long-awaited and long-needed broadband system that will bring the West's most remote tribal community closer to the world. Arkansas, Fort Smith. The University of Arkansas Fort Smith will open its new Center for Book Arts this fall, creating a space that the students and the community members can explore traditional bookmarking techniques through the hands-on instruction, workshops, and exhibits. California, Sacramento. California announced that it will implement the nation's first energy-efficient standards for replacement tires. Colorado, Fort Collins. A young black bear found itself wandering the Colorado State University campus as about 6,000 students moved in dormitories on August 18th. Colorado Parks and Wildlife spokesperson Kara Van Hoos said the bear caused no known conflicts but was safely tranquilized and relocated. Colorado, Fort Collins. I just read that one. Connecticut, New London County. Connecticut Food Share and United Way of Southeastern Connecticut have signed a 7-year agreement aimed at expanding food assistance efforts across New London County, continuing a partnership that supports local pantries, meal programs, and meal food distribution services. Delaware, Rehoboth Beach. 5 red oak trees in Rehoboth Beach's closed Grove Park infected with a quickly spreading disease must be removed immediately, according to arborists. And 14 more trees there are under evaluation after being flagged as possibly unhealthy. District of Columbia, Washington. Officials said a teenage girl died after first responders pulled her from the Potomac River near the Francis Scott Key Bridge on August 22nd, DC News Now reported. Florida, Tallahassee. The Florida panther is at a recovery crossroads as it appears the population may be shrinking in overall numbers, a trend that, if true, could mean the state animal will face extinction in the foreseeable future. Georgia, Lexington. A federal grant of $25,000 has been awarded to Lexington for repairs to the Beth Salem Church building, the Georgia State Historic Preservation Office said. Hawaii, Honolulu. American Savings Bank, formerly a subsidiary of utility firm Hawaiian Electric, said it has filed for a U.S. initial public offering. Idaho, Boise. The state has received nearly $1 billion in federal funding to help transform rural health care delivery over the next 5 years, KTVB7 reported, and applications are being accepted now for the first wave of funds. Illinois, Chicago. Residential energy company Solrite Energy said it expects to enroll up to 1,000 Illinois households in its virtual power plant program by the year end, as it bets that rising electricity costs will drive demand for home battery systems. Indiana, Indianapolis. Governor Mike Braun is calling for an investigation into Northern Indiana Public Service Company following prolonged power outages still affecting Gary and Portage after storms and flooding earlier in August. Iowa City. The city is investing nearly $2 million to help local organizations improve public access to the arts. The City Council approved a resolution to establish an Iowa City Endowment for the Arts, a self-sustaining funding source for local arts programs. Kansas, Edgerton. The city of Edgerton, El Dorado, and Emporia want to halt citizen-led petitions that, if implemented, would ban data centers of a certain size via ordinance. Louisiana, St. Bernard Parish. The Gulf Coast is preparing for a new generation of container shipping as Louisiana International Terminal nears construction with a federal permit now in hand. Maine, Saco. Leap and Learn held a Kids Summer Fest on August 22nd, featuring an obstacle course and arts and crafts to thank the community for helping keep the daycare open, WMTV reported. Maryland, Hagerstown. The new building sign for the renamed Thomas J. Garner Elementary School was installed on August 19th. The school was recently renamed to honor its late principal, Tom Garner, who died in October 2025. A ribbon cutting for the school will be held on September 3rd, said Marcy Burleson, the school's academic achievement coordinator. Massachusetts, Dartmouth. The University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth School of Law is welcoming its largest incoming class ever, with 148 students beginning their legal education ahead of the 2026-27 academic year. The record-setting class follows an admission cycle that attracted more than 1,500 applicants, a 45% increase over 3 years, according to a community announcement. Michigan, Lansing. When Michigan public school students return to the classroom this year, they can head to their school cafeteria and have breakfast and lunch for free. A program Michigan started funding in 2023-24 school year is returning for the 2026-27 school year. The state's education budget, signed into law in July, includes $200 million to continue free school meals for 1.4 million public school students. Minnesota, St. Paul. A federal judge dismissed a lawsuit brought by nursing home industry leaders seeking to dissolve the state's Nursing Home Labor Standards Board, which the legislature created in 2023 to set minimum wages and employment standards, Minnesota Reformer reported. Mississippi, Jackson. A month-long labor dispute that disgruntled Jackson's public transit system has ended after JTran drivers and MV Transportation reached and ratified a new contract agreement, city officials announced. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes past the hour. Missouri, Springfield. Ozarks Food Harvest distributed 23 million meals across southwest Missouri during its most recent fiscal year, supporting children, families, and seniors through a network of faith-based and community organizations. The food bank expanded several hunger relief programs between July 2025 and June 2026, according to a community announcement. Montana, Helena. Prickly Pear Land Trust announced the permanent protection of 198 acres at War Eagle Hill near Fort Harrison through a partnership with the Montana National Guard and Double L Family Land, preserving wildlife habitat, public hunting access, and open space around the military base, the Daily Montanian reported. Nebraska, Lincoln. The University of Nebraska Foundation announced a record $532.8 million in new funds committed to the University of Nebraska, KOLN reported. Nevada, Las Vegas. The Nevada Transportation Authority approved applications by Tesla, Waymo, and Uber subsidiary Avari to operate as autonomous vehicle network companies in the state. New Hampshire, Hampton. Police are investigating a scam that swindled an elderly couple out of their home and savings in an elaborate scheme known as Publishers Clearinghouse scam. New Jersey, Trenton. More New Jersey private sector workers will have access to a state-run retirement program designed to ensure that people can save for their golden years. Starting in September, program eligibility will expand to businesses that have 10 or more employees and have been in operation for at least 2 years and do not already have a retirement plan. New Mexico, Santa Fe. Summer sales have spelled big money for New Mexico's cannabis industry. As of June 2026, the state has officially surpassed $2.35 billion in cannabis sales, more than $1.7 billion in adult use recreational sales, and nearly $643 million in medical sales, according to the New Mexico Relations and Licensing Department's cannabis reporting online portal. The latest numbers represent a boost of almost $150 million since March. New York, Albany. Several Republican lawmakers in New York are pushing to restore funding for New York's crime victim assistance centers, as they're expected to take a funding hit in the coming months. Senate Republicans sent a letter to Governor Kathy Hochul asking for increased funding for the impacted rape crisis centers, domestic violence centers, and child advocacy centers, as well as to provide them with a more stable and predictable funding stream. North Carolina, Pender County. 7 of Pender County's 16 public schools are over capacity going into the 2026-27 school year. While relief is on the way in the form of 2 new schools opening, data shows that it won't be long before growth is again straining the school system. North Dakota, Bismarck. Senator John Hoeven said North Dakota's Theodore Roosevelt National Park wild horses are not affected by reports that some Bureau of Land Management horses have entered the slaughter pipeline, citing the herd's separate protections, KFYR reported. Ohio, Columbus. Chronically struggling public schools could be converted into charter schools, have their leadership replaced, or be forced to close, according to proposed changes Ohio wants federal education officials to approve. The proposal lists 16 ways to improve the state's lowest performing schools, which include high schools where at least a third of students do not graduate. The Ohio school leaders worry the changes go too far and weren't properly vetted. Oklahoma City. 4 people were taken to area hospitals after a school bus carrying Mustang High School students from the Canadian Valley Technology Center and another vehicle crashed west on the Oklahoma City Metro on August 24th. Oregon, Salem. A deep drawdown of the Detroit Reservoir would risk causing catastrophic damage to Salem water filtration systems and endanger the drinking water supply for its 220,000 residents, attorneys for the city wrote in a request for a preliminary injunction filed in federal court. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. An 18-year-old in Pennsylvania is accused of stabbing his girlfriend to death, and his mother is accused of helping him cover it up, according to investigators in criminal complaints against the pair. Rhode Island, Providence. A drought watch, as expected, will remain in place in Rhode Island for another month, despite record-breaking rainfall in July and continued precipitation in August. Groundwater resources still aren't back to levels that would support lifting the watch designation, members of the state committee said. South Carolina, Greenville. Students at Greenville County Schools outperformed the state in South Carolina Ready end of the course and Career Ready assessments in the 2025-26 academic year. South Dakota, Pierre. A South Dakota Health Department official told lawmakers that the number of medical marijuana patients in the state who are licensed to grow medical cannabis at home has grown by more than 1,000% over the past 4 years, South Dakota Searchlight reported. Tennessee, Nashville. Anheuser-Busch InBev sued the state of Tennessee and its Commissioner of Revenue, David Girigano, claiming the state officials wrongfully denied the company a $1.8 million tax refund. Texas, Dallas. A laptop caught fire on an American Airlines flight on August 21st, with 1 passenger treated after the plane landed in Dallas-Fort Worth. Utah, Cedar City. Southern Utah University has been selected by NASA to lead Utah's new statewide aerospace skilled technical workforce hub, connecting schools, colleges, and industry partners to expand career pathways and help build the state's future aerospace workforce, KSL reported. Vermont, Montpelier. Vermont 5th graders will again have the opportunity to elect a kid governor during the 2026-27 school year as the state continues the civic education program introduced last year. Virginia, Arlington. For more than a century and a half, the teenage soldier lay buried and forgotten on a Virginia battlefield. This fall, the unidentified Union soldier will receive the honor he never got in life, a military burial at Arlington National Cemetery. Research believe he was only 16 to 19 years old when he fought and died during the Second Battle of Manassas in 1862, one of the Civil War's bloodiest struggles. Washington, Kitsap County. The Kitsap Public Health District issued advisories warning residents to avoid all contact with Way Lake and Panther Lake due to the presence of potentially toxic cyanobacteria. West Virginia, Mill Creek. Valley Health Care recently celebrated the grand opening of its new Mill Creek Health Center, a renovated and expanded facility that more than doubles its clinical space and is expected to improve access to primary, specialty, and behavioral health services in the rural Randolph County, WDTV reported. Wisconsin, Waukesha. Gas engine manufacturer INEO plans to invest more than $300 million in its Waukesha factory and to create more than 500 jobs in the coming years, in part due to the increased business with data centers. Washington, Laramie. The city of Laramie's new bike path held its grand opening on August 22nd. Wi-Fi reported. The park includes beginner, intermediate, and advanced mountain bike features, according to the news outlet. General Motors is looking beyond its core vehicle sales for big revenue in the future, and Wall Street analysts applaud the strategy, hinting the automaker may be better positioned than its rival Ford Motor to win government contracts. CEO Mary Barra told Wall Street during a second quarter earnings call on July 21st that GM Defense and GM Insurance are on the road to become meaningful contributors to the company's profit stream. She revealed that if Congress appropriates the funds, the company stands to win a $1 billion contract to build military vehicles off the Chevrolet Colorado frame. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, August 26th, 2026 on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Mary Gilmore.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is David Frothingham. The first headline in today's sports section is Quack Attack. Dan Lanning is just Steve Sarkisian in Ducks gear. Prove me wrong, by Blake Topmeyer. What's the difference between Steve Sarkisian and Dan Lanning? One pays no state income tax, and everyone in Texas said amen. The other bears slight resemblance to Chris Pratt. Otherwise, these two coaches seem like the same guy. That's not a stinging criticism, just an observation. Most schools would be fortunate to employ either. They're top 10 coaches at premier jobs, but they don't win the biggest games. That's the rub. You say Lanning once beat Ryan Day. I say Sarkisian once beat Nick Saban. You say Lanning won the Big Ten in Oregon's first year in the conference and reached the college football playoff semifinals the following year. I say Sarkisian reached the playoff semifinals in consecutive seasons. Each guy has pelts on the wall. Neither has advanced to a national championship game despite persistently loaded teams. As an aside, neither beats Kalen DeBoer either. Alabama's highly scrutinized coach went a combined 5-0 against Lanning and Sarkisian while at Washington, but that's a subject for another day. Sarkisian came closer to reaching a season's finish line than Lanning. Texas's semifinal games in 2023 and 2024 came down to the wire. By halftime of Oregon's blowout playoff losses the past two seasons, you were wondering what's airing on MeTV. We're close, Lanning told reporters at Big Ten Media Days. Well, the Peach Bowl wasn't close. So why is it only one of these coaches, Sarkisian, faces much preseason scrutiny while the other's team gets feted? Oregon is ranked number 2 in each of college football's major polls. The Ducks received 14 first-place votes in the Associated Press Top 25. Texas is number 4 in the U.S. LBM Coaches Poll and number 5 in the AP. The Longhorns did not receive a single first-place vote among the 69 media members who voted in the AP poll. Why so much skepticism for Sark and Texas while Lanning and the Ducks soak up the love? The Oregon versus Texas debate. Okay, let's answer that question. 4 reasons why Sarkisian and Texas face more skepticism than Oregon. Number 1, recency bias. Texas fizzled last season. Sark's finest hour came in 2023 and 24. Texas earned the preseason number 1 designation last summer, but Arch Manning got off to a rocky start. Texas lost 3 times and it missed the playoff. Oregon fared better. Indiana trounced the Ducks in the end, but at least Oregon made the playoff. Its only losses came to the Hoosiers twice, the eventual champion. If you're a poll voter who typed in Texas as preseason number 1 last summer, you might hesitate to do it again with ghosts of 2025 in your brain. Number 2, voters trust Dante Moore more than Manning. Manning faced unparalleled scrutiny throughout his first full season as a Texas starter, and the New York Times absurdly positioned Manning as the first bust in college football history. A perception formed that Manning performed worse than he did. He wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. Moore was better, although Manning faced a tougher schedule. While Manning opened his season with growing pains against Ohio State, Moore opened against Montana State. Talk about a tailor-made confidence boost. How good will Manning be in his encore? Fair question. Texas will go as he goes. Number 3, voters trust Oregon to avoid the bad loss. As much as Sarkisian might want to point the finger at the selection committee, Texas missed the playoff last season because it lost to a bad Florida team. Oregon and Texas compiled similar records in the past 3 seasons. The Ducks averaged 1 more win per season, but Lanning never served a loss as unsightly as Texas's meltdown in the swamp. Counterpoint. Sarkisian beat Texas A&M and Oklahoma last season, 2 rivals and a pair of playoff qualifiers. Number 4. People tend to enjoy putting Texas in its place. Before Sarkisian righted the program, Texas spent many years acting bigger and better than its record said it was. Your average observer got exhausted by that, and Texas is back became something of a punchline. So, 1 year after Texas failed to live up to the hype, here's a chance to make the Longhorns earn their way to the top. That's fine if Texas must prove it. Why doesn't the same thinking apply to Oregon? Oregon's roster is stacked. So is the team in Austin. Lanning and Sarkisian are like the Spider-Man meme. You know, The one where two Spider-Men dressed identically point at each other? We're waiting on either to win the big one. Are Oregon and Texas in the same boat? Neither Texas nor Oregon would have a good excuse for not playing deep into January. True, each faces a difficult regular season schedule, and making the finish line of a 12-team playoff is no cakewalk, but these programs are as well positioned as any to thrive. Each program spent a war chest to assemble two of college football's most expensive rosters. Does anyone possess a more talented roster than either Oregon or Texas? Maybe Ohio State. Maybe. I don't think that conversation goes much farther than that. If you're building a preseason All-American team, keep the Oregon and Texas rosters handy. They're armed with candidates at nearly every position. Lanning and Sarkisian each had an ample runway to establish their culture. This will be Sark's sixth season and Lanning's fifth. A quarterback with superstar potential headlines each team. They've got everything a coach could want. Ryan Day and Kirby Smart didn't join the Champions Club until their sixth season, so you could argue Lanning and Sarkisian remain on the schedule. Or you could say, I'll believe it when I see it. I still see one Spider-Man pointing at another. Until one of these guys shows he's made for the Champions Club, Lanning is Sarkisian and Sarkisian is Lanning. The next headline reads, Power Leagues Consider Ban on a Pro Return by Craig Meyer. What was already an eventful and dizzying offseason in college football got a bit more surreal over the past several days, with players who had been without NFL teams during the preseason and in training camp making the once unthinkable move back to college. Now, arguably the biggest, most powerful entity in college athletics is trying to do something about it. The Big Ten is set to pass a rule that would forbid NFL players from returning to college and suiting up for a Big Ten school, according to a report from ESPN on August 25th. The report added that the measure would apply to anyone who declared for the NFL draft and didn't withdraw, appeared on an NFL roster, or signed a contract with a professional team, which would extend the rule's scope beyond just the NFL. The impending action comes after LSU is set to add two players, tight end Daquan Wright and defensive lineman Xavier Harris, who played for new Tigers coach Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss before signing NFL contracts. Both players were granted a temporary restraining order against the NCAA by a Louisiana judge. Other college players who spent time with NFL franchises during postseason, such as former Oregon State and Colorado running back Anthony Hankerson, are exploring a return to the college game. The Big Ten may not be alone either. According to a report Tuesday from Yahoo Sports, the ACC and Big 12 are also set to explore a ban on professional players. Additionally, Yahoo reported that SEC presidents are expected to direct athletic directors against adding professional players, and doing so under the threat of penalty, as league bylaws allow Conference Commissioner Greg Sankey and university presidents to deem a player ineligible. The ACC and SEC declined to comment on the matter in emails to USA Today Sports. Similar requests to the Big Ten and Big 12 were not immediately returned. The SEC, the league where much of the pro-to-college activity has been unfolding, issued a statement August 24th saying former professional athletes should not be permitted to return to college, but stopped short of any sort of action. Quote, college athletes, not former professional athletes, have been at the heart of the Southeastern Conference. Individuals who choose to leave college athletics, sign professional playing contracts, and compete professionally should not then be permitted to return to college competition, the statement said. Allowing that to occur will blur the line between college and professional sports, create significant competitive equity concerns, and reduce opportunities for high school and current college athletes. The next headline on the front of the sports section reads, Former NBA players are ineligible for WNBA draft by Callie Finn. Former NBA players Enes Kanter, Freedom, and Royce White are not eligible to enter the WNBA draft after declaring themselves women in separate publicity stunts in early August, a person with direct knowledge of the situation told USA Today Sports. The person spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. The person said August 24th that the league is not going to give oxygen to efforts designed to mock the league or use this topic to demean or marginalize others. Cantor, Freedom, and White inserted themselves into the conversation around trans athletes' participation in women's sports on August 7th, fanning flames that began intensifying when Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham said young girls playing sports shouldn't have to go against biological men, end quote. The WNBA collective bargaining agreement requires only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA. The league does not have a gender inclusion policy that would outline the eligibility of transgender or intersex athletes. There are no eligibility matters requiring action by the WNBA, the person with direct knowledge said, describing the gender declarations by Cantor, Freedom, and White as manufactured controversy and attempts to sow division and get attention. The news comes one day after Cantor, Freedom was escorted out of a game between the Indiana Fever and Chicago Sky at Wintrust Arena in Chicago after a verbal exchange with Sky guard Natasha Cloud. Cantor, Freedom, the number 3 pick by the Utah Jazz in the 2011 NBA draft, was sitting courtside in a black t-shirt that said, "Woman, noun, adult human female." Cloud walked toward Cantor, Freedom during a timeout and shouted at him. Cantor, Freedom, standing with his arms outstretched, stepped onto the court and passed photographers before security intervened. "I just got kicked out of a WNBA game for supporting women," Cantor, Freedom wrote on social media after the incident. Let that sink in, America. WNBA has not announced plans to keep Cantor, Freedom from attending games. Cantor, Freedom, 34, had an 11-year career in the NBA, playing from 2011 to 2022. White, 35, was the number 16 pick by the Houston Rockets in 2012, but played in 3 games during his career, all with the Sacramento Kings. The players added to the national discourse about transgender athlete participation in the WNBA on August 7th, when they declared they would identify as women and enter the 2027 WNBA draft. A transgender woman has never played in the WNBA, but the league has become a lightning rod for the topic after comments made by Cunningham were published in an ESPN story on July 21st. Legislation passed in 27 states barring transgender girls and women from participating in women's sports is aimed at a small portion of the population. 1% of people aged 13 and over in the U.S. identify as transgender, according to the 2025 study by the Williams Institute at UCLA Law. The Human Rights Campaign reported in 2023 that 19% of transgender youth nationwide were playing sports, including fewer than 1,300 who played sports in school. Cloud stands with LGBTQIA+ community. Cloud has been a vocal advocate on many social issues since she was drafted in 2015. She didn't speak at the Sky's post-game media availability Sunday, but addressed the transgender community via threads that night. Quote, "To every trans kid person, you are a part of my community and tribe. You belong, you're loved, you're seen. You're perfect as you are, and you will always be protected by me," Cloud wrote. The league is expected to continue to have thoughtful internal conversations surrounding the topic and will ignore attempts to mock the league and demean and marginalize others, the person said. Turning the page, the next headline reads, "College Coaches Talk on NFLers Seeking to Return," by Matthew Glenesk, Jordan Mendoza, and Zach Al-Khatib. Another day, another controversy in college sports. The latest entry into what has already been a chaotic football offseason is unprecedented in the sport. As state courts issue temporary restraining orders across the country, players who have been signed by NFL teams or thought to be out of eligibility are being cleared to return to play another season in college. In some cases, agreements are already in place for players to return, such as Lane Kiffin and LSU gaining commitments from former Ole Miss standouts Daquan Wright and Xavier Harris. What college coaches are saying. Lane Kiffin at LSU, quote, "Through players winning injunctions and entry into the portal, they are available to recruit. Ourselves and many places around the country are recruiting them," Kiffin said. "Because of the rulings, they are going to play for you or someone else. We made the decision to recruit them. It's wrong to be critical of these kids. They were granted a 5th year and a judge said they were wronged," end quote. Dan Lanning, Oregon. I think there's a lot of negatives that are involved around it, Lanning said. One, once you go to the NFL, to me, you're in the NFL. You don't get the opportunity to come back. Two, most of us have built our rosters, and you have a limited roster limit right now. So if you invited somebody back to your team, that means you're kicking somebody else off your team to match your roster limits. I don't think that's fair to the players that worked all summer, all spring, and put themselves in position to be ready to work for a team to have somebody come back. End quote. Ryan Day, Ohio State. If there are teams that have some players out there who are cut from NFL rosters that are going to be on other teams, we have to at least consider it and look at it, Day said. Do I like anything about it? Absolutely not. But we got to do what's right for Ohio State. End quote. Kalen DeBoer, Alabama. Overall, as a general, how that works, Alabama Athletics Director Greg Burns communicating with me and us about just what we can and can't do, DeBoer said. There's a possibility out there of someone that was on our roster in the past, but right now he wouldn't be able to come in and play. So I can't control that. I can't worry about that. We've just got to see how things move forward and progress. Barry Odom, Purdue. Would I take Miami Powell back? That'd be kind of fun, Odom said of last year's starting middle linebacker now with the Tennessee Titans. But who am I going to walk in the locker room and say, hey, all the work you've put in from January to today, I appreciate it, but we've got this guy. He just played the Miami Dolphins last week, and he's going to take your locker and scholarship and your game time. End quote. Bob Chesney, UCLA. The Bruins just added former James Madison linebacker and reigning Sun Belt Conference Defensive Player of the Year Trent Hendrick, who joins after he was one of the players granted an extra season with the temporary restraining order. He was practicing with the team on August 24th, while he was undrafted and did participate in NFL minicamps with the Kansas Chiefs and the Cleveland Browns. He did not sign. Chesney said the familiarity with Hendricks played a key role in wanting him to come to UCLA. We're slowly moving to more of a, AAA team for the NFL in a way, and I think that's just what it is. We had that conversation with the team, and I think they all left at the end of it, linebackers in particular, of thank you. I think that they said, I'm sure many coaches and many programs that never would have even had that conversation, the kid would just show up. So I think it's important that we had those conversations about who he was as a player, that he's guaranteed nothing, and just like everybody on this team, whatever they're going to get, they got to work for. Chesney said Hendricks does not impact the roster limit and is on track to play in the season opener. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 18 minutes after the hour. The next headline on today's sports section reads, Coaches are feeling the heat as season dawns this week, by Blake Topmeyer. College football's hot seat cranked to inferno status last season. Seats melted and turned to ash across the land from LSU to Penn State. In the SEC and Big Ten alone, 9 coaches were fired across 2 super conferences. That breakneck twirl of the coaching carousel could mean a slightly quieter spin this year. Quieter, but not silent. Here's our list of notable coaches who'll need to beat the heat in 2026. Scalding hot seats. Luke Fickell, Wisconsin. Fickell seemed like a good choice when Wisconsin plucked him from Cincinnati not long after he took the Bearcats to the college national football playoff. Not all hires that look smart on paper turn out to be good in reality. Wisconsin faced a decision last year amid a second straight losing season. Fire Fickell or fork over millions in buyout bucks. Fire Fickell and fork over millions in buyout bucks, or up the ante on name, image, likeness investment. Wisconsin kept Fickell, choosing to pour more into its roster. Chris McIntosh, Wisconsin's athletic director who retained Fickell, left in April for a job at the Big Ten offices. That leaves Fickell on a scorching hot seat, working for a boss who didn't hire him. It's win or walk, and Fickell knows it. Mike Norvell, Florida State. Lane Kiffin sprinkled an interesting breadcrumb during his introductory news conference at LSU. He revealed 3 schools tried to hire him away from Ole Miss. LSU, Florida, and, well, Kiffin didn't reveal the third, but ESPN later reported Florida State was that mystery school. It's no surprise FSU considered ousting Norvell last year when he served a fourth losing season in 6 years on the job. Norvell's big buyout, plus Kiffin choosing LSU, protected him, but he couldn't hide any longer. Florida State would owe Norvell a buyout of about $45 million if it fires him after this season. That will be failure money the Seminoles must stomach if he can't reignite a starved program. Dave Aranda, Baylor. Aranda survived the hot seat 2 years ago by delivering a winning record, but after going 5-7 last season, he's back in the hot box. He's put his hopes in Florida transfer quarterback DJ Lagway to bail him out of trouble. Aranda won the Big 12 championship in 2021, and that's too long ago to offer him any support. Plus, like others on this list, he's working for a different athletic director than the one who hired him. Like Norvell, Aranda is entering his 7th season. Coaches who fizzle in year 7 typically don't see year 8. Mike Locksley, Maryland. Locksley reiterated his recruiting chops a couple of years ago when he signed blue-chip quarterback Malik Washington. To keep his job, Locksley must show his coaching chops and accelerate in Washington's 2nd season as the starter. Locksley delivered some solid records and bowl bids in the middle of his tenure, now entering its 8th season. But he's only under contract through the 2027 season. That leaves him protected by a buyout that's peanuts compared to most peers. Maryland ratcheted up NIL support, and so now Locksley's got to win or he's got to go. Bill Belichick, North Carolina. Belichick hasn't just been bad for North Carolina. He's been a national embarrassment. There was his bizarre interview with CBS before he coached a game. There's the persistent drama with his 25-year-old girlfriend, a.k.a. his muse, who has waged a crusade against the university. Then Belichick's GM got placed on administrative leave. Belichick might be the GOAT in the NFL, but he's a joke in college football. And it's hard to justify playing the long game with a 74-year-old coach. Either he wins now or North Carolina can fork over $10 million to fire him after this season and cut its losses. Shane Beamer, South Carolina. Nobody can say Beamer didn't deliver good times for South Carolina. Twice he beat Dabo Swinney and Clemson. His Gamecocks hung 30 points in the first half on then number 3 Texas A&M in November. Then the second half started, and South Carolina blew a 27-point lead. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Beamer switched offensive coordinators in the offseason, but his roster includes many familiar faces, including veteran quarterback Lenora Sellers. Beamer has supplied a yo-yo tenure. To keep his job, the Gamecocks must climb the string once more. It's warm and could get hot. Lincoln Riley, Southern Cal. USC pushed in a big stack of chips to plunder Riley from Oklahoma. What's it got to show for its investment? No playoff appearances, and Riley's best season was his first, when the Trojans played in the Pac-12. USC is a private school, so Riley's buyout is not public, but it's believed to be a whopper. That may keep him off the scalding seat, but he's facing undeniable pressure in year 5. Perhaps he's ready to kick into gear with an experienced team. No team returned more starters than USC. Scott Satterfield, Cincinnati. The temperature around Satterfield fluctuates like spring in the Midwest. One day it's warm, the next day it's cool, then warm again. He entered last season facing heat. Then the Bearcats started 7-1. Ah, nice cool breeze. But wait, they finished by losing 5 straight, continuing Satterfield's trend for November swoons. Then Cincinnati got caught up in the Brendan Sorsby off-season saga. Maybe Satterfield's just a 500 coach. That's about what he was at Louisville, and that's about where the record finished last year. Satterfield can't expect any contract protection. His buyout is cheap. Jeff Lebby, Mississippi State. Lebby chopped up a few almost victories, is that a stat? By taking Texas, Tennessee, and Florida to the brink. That's nice, but moral victories tend to dry up for a coach now entering his 3rd season. We need more real W's. Athletic director Zach Selman hired Lebby and would love to see this work, but Lebby needs to show progress. Fortunately, the bar for progress isn't that high. Lebby won just 1 SEC game through 2 seasons. Quarterback Camario Taylor drew rave reviews in the preseason. Turn that hype into results. Bill O'Brien, Boston College. What does Boston College expect out of its football program? Seriously, that's a relevant question. O'Brien went 2-10 last year. Obviously, the school decided that wasn't entirely the coach's fault. To keep up with ACC peers, Boston College needed to invest more in its roster. Boston College joins a few other schools on this list that retained a struggling coach and ponied up more money for athletes. With more investment comes expectations for improvement. Derek Mason, Middle Tennessee State. Mason's hire seemed okay in theory. He brought respectability to Vanderbilt up until a dreadful pandemic season that got him fired. He's a respected defensive mind, so couldn't he succeed at a Conference USA program that had for years been competitive under Rick Stockstill? Apparently not. Mason is 6-18 after 2 years. That's dangerous footing. They're fine, but keep an eye on Dabo Swinney, Clemson. When a legend like Swinney supplies a bad season, you don't even think about firing him. What if he has consecutive bad seasons? Clemson fans widely cherish Swinney. They'll give him a pass for this year's fizzle if he rebounds, but Swinney's dynasty is finished. One of the great sign and develop coaches of his generation, he struggled to adapt in the player free agency era. Swinney, 56, says he has no plans to retire. That's grand if he wins. If he doesn't, Swinney's resume and his $57 million buyout offer security, but a season that mirrors the last would accelerate angst. Matt Rule, Nebraska. Athletic departments specialize in fiscal irresponsibility. Exhibit A, Nebraska. Perhaps scared by Penn State's opening, gave Rule an extension and increased what it would cost to fire him. All this for a coach who is 500 through 3 seasons. Nebraska shows little sign of momentum, with modest projections for the season, win total. Thanks in part to the extension, Rule's buyout would top $60 million if he's fired after this season. Is that too expensive for Nebraska to admit a mistake? Brent Venables, Oklahoma. Venables, facing the hot seat last season, took over play calling for the defense. It worked. Oklahoma's defense propelled the Sooners to the playoff, and Venables put the thermometer in the cooler. And yet, expectations never wane at Oklahoma or inside the SEC. Venables' tenure has lacked year-to-year consistency, and Oklahoma University faces one of the nation's toughest schedules. If the Sooners backtrack, Venables could find himself inching back toward the hot seat. Moving on to the next headline reads, Bill Belichick about to give it another go, by Blake Topmeyer, John Bryce, and Matt Hayes. College Football Unfiltered, presented by Sports Seriously, is USA Today Sports' newest podcast hosted by USA Today Sports columnist Blake Topmeyer. With sharp analysis, real perspective, and a finger on the pulse of the biggest storylines in college football, delivering news, opinions, and context that fans actually care about. You can find our episodes at USA Today Sports on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. This week, Blake is joined by USA Today Sports college insider John Bryce and columnist Matt Hayes to discuss Week 0, including the start of Bill Belichick's second season at North Carolina, in Dublin versus TCU. The rising cost of putting together a roster and whether it's Miami and everyone else in the ACC title race. Here are a few excerpts from the episode released August 24th. Can it get worse for the coach in year 2 at UNC? Hayes. You know, what's amazing to me is that Belly was always seen as this great personnel guy who knew players and knew exactly what he needed and how to make everything fit and work. He's got 70 new players the first year, 60 new players the second year. I'm not that good at math, but I can guarantee you that means he's missed on a lot of guys in year 1. So I still don't have a quarterback. I don't have a defensive coordinator now either. His son apparently away for whatever reason. The GM's away because they're investigating him for an HR issue. There's a lot going on there at North Carolina, and they're playing a really good TCU game that's got a little edge right now. Got a little chip on its collective shoulder because Josh Hoover left for Indiana because he wanted to go play for a championship. And it's a pretty good TCU team that won 9 games last year. So this is going to be, I hate to say this for North Carolina fans, might even be worse than last year. Is this the year Miami finally wins the ACC title? Topmeyer. It's like Miami and everybody else in the ACC. I mean, I guess it's open for number 2. I feel like the ACC is Miami's to lose far and away. So is like when we say it's an open conference, are we talking about like if it becomes a 2-bid league, it's the second bid that is open, or do you really see it being open at the top? Bryce. Look, Miami has one of the most expensive rosters in all of college football, and they're looking to build off the success that they had last year. But they stubbed their toe a couple of times over the balance of last season, and they still have to prove that they can navigate a full campaign without doing that. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Hayes. I think we have to look at this realistically. In the time that Miami's been in the ACC, Duke and Wake Forest have won the ACC. Miami has not. Miami hasn't won the ACC. So, I mean, I'm with you like I see it, and I think I mean it's Miami and the 16 Dwarves, maybe SMU 15 Dwarves. But until Miami does it, until you see Miami go in there and actually take control of that league, I don't know how anyone could say, yeah, of course it's Miami. Obviously, Darian Mensah puts them high in the list right now as far as favorites to win that league. But I'm a big track record guy, and Miami hasn't done it yet. I want to see them do it. Topmeyer. I think that's fair. Like if you're in the prove it camp, I get that if you're in the who's got the best roster, I think Miami clearly has the best roster in the conference. Moving on in the sports section, the next headline reads, Browns pick now over future at QB1 by Nancy Armour. The Cleveland Clown Show continues. By settling on Deshaun Watson as their starting quarterback, the Cleveland Browns managed to stick both a finger in the eyes of their fans and a fork in yet another season. That's an impressive level of ineptitude, even for this franchise. Making Shedeur Sanders QB1 would have been a gamble, yes. He's young and still very much a work in progress. He was 3-4 as a starter his rookie season, and his performances in the Browns' first 2 2026 preseason games were, to put it nicely, rough. Sanders is, however, the closest thing Cleveland has to a future right now. Parking him on the bench does nothing to speed his development. Even if he'd wind up being a 5-alarm dumpster fire, Sanders would still be a better choice for the Browns than an aging, injury-prone, mediocre quarterback, an unrepented accused sexual predator who the fan base loathes even more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Quote, ultimately, the fans want us to win. I mean, ultimately, put a good product on the field. That's really what they want. Browns coach Todd Monken said on August 24th after announcing Watson as the starter. Fans don't decide who plays, Monken added. I mean, who would I be if I let someone outside the building decide who plays? Someone who can read a room? Watson's past hangs over present. Watson is more toxic than the Cuyahoga River ever was, and 4+ years have done nothing to soften Cleveland fans' opinions of him. Quote, I think the whole world knows it has nothing to do about the performance, Watson told reporters after he was booed during the August 22nd preseason game. It's a little more personal than that, so I think it's a disrespectful thing. Of course it's personal, but if you want to talk disrespectful, let's talk about those lawsuits Watson settled with 27 women who detailed unwanted touching and or sexual harassment by the quarterback. While it's true Watson was never charged, go look up the statistics on the percentage of sexual assault cases that actually get pursued and denied wrongdoing. A police detective said in a deposition in one of the civil cases she believed that his behavior was criminal. The NFL's independent disciplinary officer, a former U.S. district judge, determined Watson had a sexual purpose for the appointments. Watson has never apologized or taken responsibility for his dehumanizing treatment of those women. He'd rather throw himself pity parties because Brown fans aren't willing to gloss over his misdeeds. I thought I was going to get a little different response, but I think my emotions got the best of me, a more contrite Watson told reporters at the training camp August 24th. My comment wasn't intending to go at any of the fans around the city because there's been a lot of great fans that have been supporting me. Are those fans here in the room? Watson's lack of success on the field doesn't help. The thing is, with the NFL being the NFL and society having as dim a view of women as it does, Browns fans probably would have been willing to give Watson a fresh start if he'd had success on the field, or even just been available. But he hasn't done either. Since owners Dee and Jimmy Haslam foisted him on the Browns ahead of the 2022 season, Watson has played all of 19 games. He is 9-10 as Cleveland starter with 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and an 80.7 QB rating. Compounding that lack of reliability and productivity is the worst contract in sports, $230 million, every penny of which is fully guaranteed, according to USA Today sports reporting. If the Browns cut him this season, they take a cap hit of $86.2 million next season, according to SpotTrack. If they wait until the league's next calendar year, they at least can spread the pain over 2027 and 2028, according to Over the Cap. So the Browns are stuck, and their fans are stuck with Watson. It's a lose-lose scenario for a franchise that has known little else since it returned to Cleveland almost 30 years ago. What are we really in this for? What am I in it for? To have the Browns be an organization that people aspire to be, Monken said. Instead, Cleveland is squandering its future for a guy with an ugly past, while telling fans their feelings about it don't matter. Maybe one year the Browns will act like a serious NFL team. This year isn't going to be it. The next headline reads, Browns hope to recoup by giving Watson one last try, by Tyler Dragon. Of course, the organization with a perpetual quarterback merry-go-round made a perplexing decision about their starting quarterback. We shouldn't be surprised by the Cleveland Browns' choice to name Deshaun Watson their starting quarterback over Shedeur Sanders. After all, this is a Browns franchise that's trotted out the most starting quarterbacks in the NFL since 1999. Watson and Sanders have performed about evenly throughout their offseason competition. Watson outplayed Sanders in Cleveland's preseason opener versus the Chicago Bears. He completed more passes, had more passing yards, and a superior passing rating. Sanders fared better in the Browns' second preseason contest against the Buffalo Bills. The second-year QB completed more passes, threw far more yards, tossed a touchdown, and had the better passer rating. Each preseason contest typified the back-and-forth nature of an off-season-long QB competition. Quote, took in the full body of work over the course of the off-season to training camp to the games, the joint practice, and ultimately felt like the start of the season on the road. Deshaun gave us the best chance to move the ball and score points, Browns coach Todd Monken said to reporters on August 24th. That's really what it's about. Deshaun Watson contract. Watson's albatross contract certainly factors into the Browns' decision whether the organization wants to admit it or not. The Browns gave Watson a 5-year, $230 million, fully guaranteed contract in March 2022 and have subsequently received diminished returns. A 9-10 record as starter, a sub-mediocre 80.7 passer rating, an average of less than 180 passing yards per game, 177.1, and 2 seasons in the last 2 years that have ended early due to injury. Lackluster quarterback play from Watson, all under the backdrop of accusations of sexual assault and inappropriate conduct during massage sessions by more than 24 women. Oddly enough, the Boo Birds Watsons heard in Cleveland have largely been performance-based despite Watson's tone-deaf comments on Saturday that he later apologized for on Monday. It's also why Browns owner Jimmy Haslam told reporters the organization took a big swing and a miss with Deshaun in March 2025. Watson has 1 year remaining on this contract. Monken and the Browns' choice to start the polarizing QB is a final act to try to salvage arguably the worst contract in NFL history. Quote, I know the frustration. This organization has put a lot of investment to get me back, and things haven't been going in the right direction that we thought it was. A lot of injuries, a lot of time off, and not playing the best football, Watson told reporters on August 24th. I understand the frustration. I understand kind of everything that goes into that. Starter choice out of line with reality. Still, Starting Watson doesn't align with the current state of the Browns organization. The Browns traded the face of their franchise, Myles Garrett, in June and have 2 first-round picks in the 2027 NFL Draft. The organization's in the midst of a rebuild, and the moves that preceded Watson being named starter illustrated it. The only reasonable rationale to start Watson is to give the 30-year-old QB one last chance to attempt to rekindle the form he displayed during 3 Pro Bowl seasons as a member of the Houston Texans 2018 to 2020, which included a 2020 campaign in which he was the NFL's passing leader, a stat that seems unfathomable today. The Browns begin the regular season with 2 road games against Jacksonville Jaguars and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A slow start by Watson will for sure aggravate a fan base undoubtedly ready to go in a different direction under center. If Watson begins the year like he's played his entire tenure in Cleveland, the Browns should bench Watson and move forward with Sanders. Yes, the Browns' decision to start Watson runs counter to where the franchise is right now, but there are enough regular season games on Cleveland's slate to offer Watson one more opportunity and give Sanders an in-depth assessment before the Browns inevitably restart their quarterback merry-go-round ahead of what's anticipated to be a quarterback-rich 2027 draft class. Moving on today's life section in the USA Today, the top headline reads, Einbinder and Schönbrunn bond over camp trip, by Patrick Ryan. Growing up, every queer person that has that one gay awakening moving. For filmmaker Jane Schönbrunn, it was watching the Royal Tannenbaums and wanting to make mixtapes with Gwyneth Paltrow's smoky-eyed Sphinx. Hannah Einbinder, meanwhile, was smitten with the sports comedy Bring It On. Gymnastics and cheerleading have such homoerotic overtones, so that was probably something I was responding to, says Einbinder, seated with Schönbrunn on a visit to USA Today's studio. I went on to become a cheerleader from 11 to 18, and it's like, yeah, there was also something else you were trying to do too, girl. Einbinder, 31, stars in Schönbrunn's exotic horror fantasia Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, in theaters now, a highly meta exploration of how the media we consume shape our attitudes towards sex and sexuality. The Emmy-winning comedian plays Chris, a burgeoning queer director who's tasked with rebooting the 80s slasher franchise Camp Miasma, which since has been deemed problematic for its trans killer, Little Death, Jack Haven. She pays a visit to the series' original final girl, Billy Presley, Gillian Anderson, now a vampy, reclusive actress who helps Chris overcome her anxiety and shame around physical intimacy. The film is immensely personal to Schönbrunn, 39, who uses they-them pronouns. They examine trans body dysphoria in 2022's We're All Going to the World's Fair and 2024's I Saw the TV Glow. With Camp Miasma, Schönbrunn wanted to show the mystery and terror and joy of finally being comfortable in one's own body. After transitioning, I literally remember figuring out what love songs were, Schönbrunn says. You can listen and understand them intellectually, but if you haven't dared to be yourself and get your heart broken, you're not going to really understand. That was something I didn't allow myself until transition. During production, quote, I remember talking to Hannah about this particular joy of first love post-transition with somebody who saw me as me. If little me could feel what I'm feeling, now, little me would be like, oh, awesome, magic is real. For Einbinder, sexuality felt almost like a performance. Camp Miasma is the first movie for Einbinder since her TV breakthrough in Hacks, where she plays a comedy writer, Ava Daniels, opposite Jean Smart's comic legend, Deborah Vance. Throughout the show's 5-season run, Einbinder spent most of her off time honing her stand-up, although when Schönbrunn's script came along, she was eager to try something new as a performer. Quote, the film is incredibly relatable to me, Einbinder says, a self-described late bloomer who was kind of a prude. The actress was diagnosed with ADHD as a teen and prescribed a pretty high dose of Adderall. Consequently, she felt disconnected from her emotions and body for years. She came out as a bisexual in 2016, a year before graduating college. I think I realized I was queer first, and then I started to connect more to my sexuality, Einbinder says. But still, I wasn't embodied. I had no practice communicating what I wanted. Regardless of gender, we all get used to performance and playing certain roles, and I was doing a lot of performing. Schönbrunn similarly shut themselves off from intimacy growing up, although the desire was still there. It's not like I didn't know what sex was from a decent enough age, but the darkness around it was this thing where you're not in the right body, Schönbrunn says. As a result, you develop this sort of irony pill. My adolescent perspective on sex was just like, haha, you guys are all so dumb. I'm just going to be over here not having sex. It's puritanical in its own way because you're denying yourself a human experience. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Schönbrunn won't let Hollywood steal my soul after Camp Miasma. Schönbrunn and Einbinder were introduced over a Zoom call to discuss the project and bonded instantly while attending a Godspeed You! Black Emperor concert before filming started. It was extremely, do you want to go do karate in the garage? Einbinder says, quoting Step Brothers. We loved each other, Schönbrunn adds. I do my best work if I'm surrounded by people who I feel comfortable being vulnerable around. I was awed by Hannah's work ethic, but she also just is really brave and open-hearted. Hannah is the rare person who may be qualified for sainthood. What the heck? Thanks, Einbinder says. Listen, I'm just trying to get to those pearly gates and eat a big old hot dog when I get there. End quote. The actress wants to continue making work such as Camp Miasma that she finds funny, meaningful, and cool. Schönbrunn, meanwhile, has been the lone trans person in many industry meetings and finds the state of Hollywood pretty bleak right now. They're now adapting the graphic novel Black Hole for Netflix, although they no longer feel the need to chase what's considered mainstream. I'm so proud of the things I've made, and I'm trying to be like, anything that's going to steal my soul from me is ultimately not it, Schönbrunn says. I used to be like, I'm going to start a production company. I'm going to be the trans J.J. Abrams, and we're going to totally transform everything. They Abrams? They Abrams, Einbinder says, grinning as Schönbrunn laughs. Sorry. The next headline in the Life section reads, Pitt star draws on ADHD to play Mel, by Brian Alexander. Before even taking on the role of Dr. Mel King in 2025 on HBO's The Pitt, Taylor Dearden faced the most personal decision of her acting career. The then little-known actress, daughter of actors Bryan Cranston and Robin Dearden, had to consider whether she was ready to publicly reveal her own ADHD diagnosis by playing the character even she refers to simply as Mel. Dearden, 33, recalls a pivotal conversation with the Pitt executive producer and showrunner John Wells before taking the spotlight role. Quote, John said something incredibly thoughtful when he asked, are you ready to metaphorically come out of the neurodivergent closet? Are you ready to represent? He said to me, take the weekend and let me know if you're ready to be a figurehead for this. That really affected me because I realized I wanted to see more real portrayals on TV. But I'm also going to unmask myself. Am I ready for that? And after the weekend, I came back in and said, let's go. Dearden took off as fan favorite Mel at the fictional Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center, and the personal gamble paid off. In July, the breakout Pitt star celebrated in scrubs with her castmates on the hospital set after earning her first career Emmy nomination for supporting actress. Part of the Pitt's award juggernaut, as the medical drama led all shows with 25 nominations for season 2. But for Dearden, the impact of playing Mel goes well beyond awards recognition. Her nuanced portrayal has given neurodivergent viewers a rare chance to see their own experiences authentically reflected on screen, while bringing greater visibility and understanding to a community long saddled with Hollywood stereotypes. It means there's this group of people who thought they were freaks for so long, Dearden said. So many people see themselves in Mel, so that's very special. Dearden didn't know that when first reading for Mel, a character who still has not expressed a specific diagnosis, the character was going to exhibit traits of neurodivergence. But when I read the scripts, I got the vibe. The producers didn't initially know that I was neurodivergent when I auditioned, but I really leaned into that aspect with Mel. When producers later mentioned they wanted to cast a neurodivergent actor for the role, Dearden spoke up. I remember that day because when they told me that, I went, well, you're in luck because I'm also spicy, she says. Dearden has worked closely with the Pitt team, including Wells, Noah Wiley, and autism consultant Dr. Wendy Ross, to bring aspects of Dearden's personality to the character, even though Mel's diagnosis is different than my own. During season 1, as the cast geared up for the depiction of mass casualty shooting, Dearden pitched an idea to Wiley. I said, I don't know if you know this, but there's this thing with my neurodivergence, or ADHD. We're really good in emergencies, she says. Emergency departments and firefighters are disproportionately ADHD represented, but I feel like Mel could click in here and filter out the noise. And Noah told me, you don't know how, but that's really going to work. When shooting victims flooded the ER in episode 11, Mel became noticeably calmer, more focused, and decisive. The Renaissance fair-loving Mel's humor is an especially unexpected reason why the character has become a fan favorite. Mel can also be screamingly funny, often without realizing it. Her earnest, oversharing, unexpected bluntness, and tendency to take words literally give Dearden some of the Pitt's best deadpan moments, often from improv. Often with Mel, it's that she's so invested in everything else that she's not noticing the joke she's set up, Dearden says. I tell the directors, just tell me to turn it up or turn it down, but I'll keep trying stuff, and if it works, it stays. What will happen in season 3 for Mel in the Pit? Season 2 has seen 2 dominant Mel storylines, a taxing deposition and medical malpractice lawsuit that leaves Mel increasingly preoccupied, and her relationship with her neurodivergent sister Becca King, Emmy-nominated actress Tal Anderson, who begins dating despite Mel's overprotective concerns. Both storylines will continue in season 3, now in production, which take place in November, months after the 4th of July holiday in season 2. Mel's been acting as Becca's caretaker, whether Becca wanted it or not, Dearden says. Season 3 is going to be a lot trying to figure out who she is as herself for the first time. We'll see her trying to be her own person with her own friends. Viewers already got a glimpse of how this would play out during the blowout final season 2 scene, a tiki bar karaoke post-shift outing with Dr. Trinity Santos, Isa Briones, offering a rare Pitt look at any character outside the hospital walls. It was so weird. They created this tiki bar nowhere close to the hospital set. It felt so odd, Dearden said, of the early morning shoot, which saw Broadway star Briones deliberately holding back vocally for TV. Before we shot, Isa said, I don't think Santos is a great singer. I was like, oh, thank God, because otherwise that would have sucked. If Isa and Taylor ever went out to karaoke, I wouldn't sing at all. Both actresses pulled off the hair-flipping, tension-relieving version of Alanis Morissette's 90s rage anthem, You Oughta Know, putting an exclamation mark at ending the Pit Season 2. We got ourselves hyped up, and we did the song twice, Dearden said, and the director was like, yep, we got it, we're good. It was a blast. The next headline, under the movies banner, reads, Downward Goat left Spa Star scratched up, by Aaron Jensen. Dateline is Las Vegas. The Spa Weekend filmmakers have a bit of life advice. We hate goats, says John Lucas, making his co-director and screenwriting partner Scott Moore laugh. Don't ever work with goats. The duo behind beloved comedies such as The Hangover and Bad Moms have writers' regret about a scene in their new farce in theaters now. In Spa Weekend, a long-standing group of friends played by Michelle Buteau, Anna Faris, Isla Fisher, and Leslie Mann try out goat yoga while staying at a resort where they reconnect and recuperate from their busy lives. We didn't have any CGI goats, Moore reveals. They're all real goats. Fisher, 50, says this scene was the most challenging to film thanks to her unpredictable four-legged co-stars. It was as if the goats had never seen humans before. They were pooping and peeing and screaming, she said at the movie's world premiere at Fontainebleau, Las Vegas. I was happy when that scene was over. For research, producer Suzanne Todd attended a goat yoga class, which was terrifying and smelly and hard, really hard. We went into it thinking it was going to be this magical goat thing, Todd says, predicting the goats would intuitively apply a bit of pressure at the appropriate time, like an instructor. None of that from the goats, none at all. When they would stand on your back, it's actually really hard because the goat is heavy and those hooves are sharp. Moore remembers man handling the goats like a champion while clad in yoga attire. It was her bare back with these hooves, he says, and every time I'm like, oh my God, we're scratching up her back. Leslie did not complain. She was just in it. Man, 54, smiles while recalling the experience at the premiere, where she wore a strapless vintage gown embellished with stones. The goats were a lot older than they said they were going to be, so they were large, like full-grown goats, Mann says. They liked to climb on our backs, and I was scratched up and bruised, but it was fun. Injuries are nothing new for the leading ladies, who have all been in the world of comedy for so long, Farrah says in an interview with her co-stars. I remember in George of the Jungle being in a scene with a lion, Mann says, astonishing her co-stars. In the 1997 film, the title character, Brendan Fraser, tussles with the beast before rescuing Ursula, Mann. The actress says the lion wasn't sedated and had a trainer guy off to the side, but the lion could reach me before the trainer could intervene. Leslie, I feel that experience, Ferris 49 says, because doing those scary movies early on, back in the day, it was like, oh, they don't mind if I drown. Okay. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Wednesday, August 26, 2026. We read from the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been David Frothingham.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 6 of A World Appears by Michael Pollan. At 3 o'clock is Healthy Living, and at 4 o'clock is a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.